It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. All right, before the break, running back, DB. Those are the two that we are considering for number 4. The winner, if you will, gets to be in the top 3, I think, with no surprise, with wide receivers and the D-line. I tend to lean defensive backs a little less confident. Again, we're talking about like 8 out of 10 versus 8.5 out of 10 or something like that in terms of confidence level. I feel really good about Emmanuel Forbes, as good as you can about a guy coming in. You know, obviously we know about the size questions in terms of his bulk and his strength. But his ball skills are just tremendous. His confidence, his mental makeup. And the thing that I think we learned in OTAs, that we had heard a little bit about, but the more you got to like hear about him and then see it, his recognition is off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't even know what he's doing yet because he hasn't played it. Actually, like he doesn't have any NFL file yet. He hasn't actually played an NFL game, and he's already got a great recognition of what defense or what offenses are trying to do to him and his group back there. And so if you take that, you take BSJ, you take Fuller, you know, Quan, again, like he's a rookie, but I think they'll be able to kind of put him in the right role to let him succeed. They got the 3 other guys. I think I think the other thing that makes me more worried about them, one, like the less interchangeability we've seen the last couple of years. Like one guy misses and the drop off can be really significant. Running back, it's like, oh, they got to bring in Jonathan Williams off the practice squad. He'll be fine. Like there's that. And then we really don't know who the nickel is at this point still. It's, you know, is it BSJ? Is it Kendall? Like, will they just basically play Buffalo guys there, whether it's Quan or, you know, have him switch between like a Buffalo role and a regular role? Like, we don't know who that spot is. And they're just, as we talked about with you know, O-line, there aren't a lot of spots where we actually don't know who the guy is. And while, you know, who's your left guard is an every snap problem and who's your nickel is not, the fact that we don't know, I think, makes it harder to put them in the top 3. So, you know, as we're splitting hairs here, to me, that becomes a pretty defined hair to split. I think I'd put DBs 4th.
Yeah, I think the thing that, and again, I'm fine with that, but I think the thing that gets me a little bit, I'm less concerned about, quite honestly, is the idea that they have bodies that can participate there now. You know, you have Quan, who played nickel in college. You know, you have BSJ, who played nickel. You have Cam, who's done that. You have all these different types of people. Percy's done that a little bit, you know. Khaleke Hudson did that a little bit in OTAs and minicamp. So, like, there's just a lot of people that can fill in there, and I think they all did a good job. Again, maybe you go back to that defensive thing where, like, the safeties look so good because they didn't have to fit the run. The nickel looks so good because they didn't have to play the run. And I'm with that. I get that. And I'd probably say that's probably a better question, you know, in terms of like where that group's at. But in terms of answering questions during OTAs, like, I don't know if they could have looked any better, quite frankly. Right. So, but I'll go with that. I get what you're saying. Like, there's a little bit of uncertainty about who's doing what. The safeties,
well, and especially when it's, you know, you talked earlier about how O-line and DB are the 2 position groups that reps together really matters. And when you have all these pieces constantly moving in and out, there is a better chance that there's some miscommunication because you're not operating snap in, snap out with the same group of guys. And as they try during training camp to get all these guys different reps in different spots, do they get enough reps together in whatever combinations are actually going to be used on game day? I think that's just kind of par for the course in terms of the nature of the position, but it is a separator here compared to, I think they have 3 very solid running backs with fairly defined roles and by the way, depth behind them in case something goes sideways.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I'll give you here is that I think the only reason I would be comfortable putting the DBs behind, again, for all those reasons you mentioned, but also with the running backs, if you're saying that EB is going to expand their usage, and I think he will. You know, I think we're pretty confident he's going to do that with the tight ends. Pretty confident he's going to do that with the backs. So I could definitely see that relationship there. You know, so I'm with it 100%. So what is it? DB running back? Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah. So running back then becomes 3rd, and I think there's a line there between them and the top 2 for sure. The thing with the running back that I think is interesting. So you have Robinson, who's kind of this bruiser. And I'll say this about running back even before I get into the specifics. We came out of last season thinking they're going to be this like run heavy team. Ron's going to go find, like, is he going to go hire Greg Roman and
Yeah,
run the ball the highest percentage in the entire league? And I think it's pretty clear that they're not going to do that with Bieniemy because that's not how he thinks about offense. And Bieniemy's got a ton of power and control over these things. I do think they'll run it more than they did in Kansas City. I also think that you have to think of the screen game and to an extent the quick game as an extension of the run game. It accomplishes similar things. So they will have a much more effective usage of that than they did previously under Turner. So I think all those things are good. But there is kind of the question of like, what is the impact of this group? Is it a super heavy impact group, or is it kind of sitting in the background as an ancillary supportive piece? And some of that's going to come down to what you talked about, the usage of Antonio Gibson specifically. Is the screen game just going to be a monster part of their offense? And if so, is he the guy that's getting out into space?
yeah.
Um, how much do they use Robinson? And then you have uh, the kid out of Kentucky whose now name I'm keeping
Chris
Chris.
Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Chris Rodriguez. I want to say Robinson, but I was like, nope, that's
Nope,
Brian.
that's not right. Yeah,
Chris Rodriguez, who has been compared in part because of where he was drafted and who he's going to be playing for to Isaiah Pacheco, who
sure.
is basically like EB loves a third back who is a battering ram who runs like someone stole something from him, and he is trying to chase them and beat them down with his body, like run them over as
Yeah,
punishment. And that is who Chris Rodriguez is. That's who Isaiah Pacheco was. And Pacheco was ultimately the leading rusher for the Chiefs last year. I doubt that is going to happen because Robinson can also do a lot of that. But I think they have like the right three guys, with the question mark to me being who's the pass pro guy. That is the one question I have for the running back position. Who is the best pass protector, and can they make enough advances in that part of the game to get what they need out of that position?
no, I totally agree with that. I think it's a really well balanced group. I think the Chris Rodriguez thing will be really interesting to see to watch because like he's not like a non. He needs shoulder pads and a helmet to look like to be good at what he's good at, you know. So like that'll be interesting to see if he's ready for NFL stuff. The Gibson thing is interesting, and you know when you watch Kansas City's offense, it's not like the backs are like this huge offensive feature. You know, like they catch a lot of checkdowns, they catch a lot of screens, they catch stuff in the red zone off of kind of design pick plays and things like that. So I look at that and I say to myself, like, they will be impactful, their role will expand, but it's, you know, in terms of the personnel there, is it kind of a make or break? I don't I don't know. I don't know. You know, running back in general has been devalued. But I think they've got three good football players there, and I think they've got an expanded role in the offense, and I think the they are deserving of being in that third spot.
Yeah. All right. So that leaves us with receivers, DBs.
No
Sorry,
receivers
receivers, D
and
line. I
yeah, there we
apologize.
go. Come on,
Um, who is two, and then we leave our champion, most confident, for the end.
man. This is tough.
It
It's
is
a
tough.
really tough one. It kind of go either way. I think if I was going to make an argument for, like, if I was a lawyer and I said, let's, you know, why the
Everybody
D,
loves lawyers. Sure, go
yeah,
ahead, do that.
yeah, why the D line
All due
shouldn't
respect to
be,
the lawyers.
yeah, why D line shouldn't be number two or shouldn't be number one. I'd say Chase Young's the biggest question mark there, in my opinion. I think that group is deep. I think it's athletic. I think they're uber talented. It's just about what is Chase Young, and I think even in terms of him, like they're still going to be a good group because they showed they can be a good group with James and Casey and Fa rotating in there. You know, John Ridgeway, Fedarian Mathis, the depth there is awesome. They're like perfect depth pieces, exactly what you want. And then you've got two of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, maybe the best tandem in the NFL. A top 15 edge rusher in Montez Sweat and a guy who was a former second round pick in Chase. So there's not a lot there, but I think if there's one question about that group, it's probably Chase Young.
Um, I think you would just explain why they're number one, which
Yeah,
is the biggest question mark is the difference between them being like excellent and great
really good. Yeah,
versus really good versus great versus wide receiver. They have had injury issues the last couple of years. Like Curtis, obviously 2 years ago. Jahan missed a bunch of time last year.
Yeah,
It's the nature of that position because it's the position that does the most long sprinting. There tends to be a lot more hamstring issues, things like that,
soft
that get
tissue.
in the way. They are learning a new offense. They've got a new quarterback that they're relying on, who, by the way, we put 8th in these rankings. So I think there are more questions. And then you have the depth. Is this the year that with his college quarterback, De'Ami Brown finally comes through? Who is the 5th guy? Who is the 6th guy?
Yeah,
If that is something that you need, and can those guys step up if needed on a week where it's early December, one of those starter top 3 guys goes down. How do you do it? And some of
yeah,
that is not going to be direct replacement, right? Some of that is they would run more stuff with tight ends. They get Gibson on the field in some different, like if Curtis goes down, they might just put Gibson out there in some of those plays and substitute it that way. So there is a little bit of insurance, a little bit of support there in that way. But I think that the nature of the position is more fickle, and I think the depth is stronger on the defensive line. That even if the former number 2 overall pick is not performing to a high level, um, James Smith Williams was a starter last year, and he played
yeah,
very, very well. Casey Toohill started in spots and played very well. They brought FA back. Like, it's a group that's played together. They are not reliant on another position in the same way that the receivers are reliant on the quarterback. Their depth is excellent, and they also have hyper elite talent, which is something the wide receiver position has with Terry, and maybe even Jahan. But I think there's so much. You talk about confidence that comes with like assuredness, and I
yeah,
think the D line is the most sure thing that they have on this team.
yeah. I agree. I mean, I think again, you're nitpicking that group because it's really good. It's really deep. It's really talented. And I think with the receivers, um, like they are really predicated on quarterback play, and so like how do they handle that? But in terms of having good football players there, I think you feel very good about Jahan. You feel very good about Terry. Again, Curtis is one of those guys that's a big usage guy. Dax Milne had an excellent OTA period. Like kind of as that 4th guy, 5th guy potentially. Diami looked good at times. So there are probably more questions there. I think the depth's not quite as comprehensive with the receivers, but I think they're pretty good at football, and I think those top 2 guys are pretty gosh darn good. And but yeah, so I'm pretty confident that Terry's going to be Terry, Jahan's going to be Jahan. Curtis is a little bit of a question mark in terms of what he becomes. But I guess when you say it like that, you kind of say, I don't have any questions about the defensive line outside of one dude. And there's like literally 9 guys I just mentioned. I think those guys are all going to be good football players. So I think, yeah, receivers 2, defensive line 1.
Yeah. And, God forbid if one of the top guys goes down at any of those positions, like you feel better about the defensive line being able to step up and fill it than you do
Because
at the
they've done
receiver
it.
spot. Because
They've,
yeah, exactly. I mean, they did it all of last year with Chase out, and they were still pretty solid last year. You got a bunch of dudes that are hungry and focused and prepared. There are a lot of contract years as well,
yeah,
which can go sideways if things go badly. Guys get upset because they don't think they're going to get their money. But I genuinely think that they'll be fine. I think the improved defensive back play is going to help them out. I think the experience is going to help them out. And by the way, they're playing in the same scheme. And something that we've obviously touched on, but not directly mentioned here is like if we did a coach's confidence rankings, like
yeah,
we're very, I think, confident in Eric Bieniemy because of what he's been, but he has not been in this exact position before. He's
yeah,
got new players. He's still learning, and he will learn things about them during the season that he just can't learn in training camp because it's not a competitive situation, or you're not looking against different defenses, and that's going to be an evolution for him. Where Del Rio is entering year 4 with basically the same group, especially when we're talking about the D line. So he knows those guys. He knows how to use them. He knows how to deploy them, and I think that has to factor in too. And while I think most of us would say EB is probably an overall better coach than Jack. Jack is very like straightforward, solid,
mhm,
and definitely showed, I think, an ability to keep a team together and motivate and do all the things you need to do as a coach last year when he kind of salvaged that group from a rough start. Um, you know, just because the ceiling's higher doesn't mean the present is higher. And
mhm.
going into the season, we don't know what we don't know about Eric Bieniemy as a sole offensive coordinator with this specific group of
And play
players.
and play callers never called
Yeah,
like
100%.
been like the play caller guy. I mean, I'm sure he's done that. That's been part
He's
of
he's
his
been a part of a process, but he has not been the guy.
right. And I think that's you never know in terms of confidence interval, right? Or
Yeah.
confidence. So Jack is Jack, and that's pretty good. He's a guy that,
Very
from a
good.
coaching standpoint, you can trust. He's got that team motivated. He's got a kind of well-established kind of stable of position coaches that are doing a great job with the guys that they have, and you feel pretty good that group's going to not maybe if they're a top 15 group, whatever, but they could be very, very good if it all comes together in the right way. So I agree. I think there's a little bit more uncertainty on the offensive side of the ball. Travell Wharton's new, as the
Yep.
offensive line coach. Juan Castillo as the run game coordinator. That's a new
Receivers
thing.
coach is new. Quarterbacks coach
Yeah.
is new.
A
Like,
lot of new stuff going on there. So, and again, that's a testament to how well the OTA process went with all those new pieces there. But there's a lot of questions there on the offensive side of the ball.
for sure. All right. So, final order: most confident to least confident. Defensive line, wide receiver, running back, tight
DB.
end. No, DB. That's correct. DB, tight
Tight
end,
end,
special teams,
linebacker, quarterback,
linebacker.
O-line.
Yeah, correct.
Quarterback, O-line.
Yep.
So
I should have rewritten that down as we went. Instead of trying to look at my initial list and order them in my head. Excellent hosting job, Craig.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean,
confidence in the host is high.
I host that podcast with Fred and Tana for the team, and I really don't have to say much because those guys will just talk about anything, right? But I do have to keep meticulous lists of stuff that they say, because when they goes like, what did we just say? It's like, oh, you guys were just talking about whatever. So it's a skill set that I'm cultivating at the moment.
Yeah, it's one that I have cultivated and just
absolutely not use in this situation. Just were like, nah, don't need it.
It's a bad job out of me. It's a real bad job out of me. All right, we'll try to do better for the second pod in the week, at least for the final 45 seconds of the show. I think the first 45 minutes were pretty darn good. Yeah. So if you agree and you like it, make sure you're subscribed wherever you are watching or listening right now. We will have a second podcast this week, even though I'm out. Basically, by the time anyone hears this, the rest of the week on the radio, doing the show on Monday, and then I'm out on vacation. But before I leave on Tuesday, we will record a pod that will come out on Wednesday. So make sure you're subscribed for that. And then we'll be back next week. We got to figure out our schedule because of the holiday. But the plan is to put out 2 episodes next week around July 4th. With all of that said, his name is Logan Paulson. You can follow him on Instagram at Logan_Paulson82. My name is Craig Hoffman. You can get me on Twitter at Craig Hoffman and on YouTube at youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman. And we will see you next week here, or later this week. God, really crushing the ending here, on Take Command. Stop the recording. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.